This is actually happening. Just yesterday, Fortnite official tweeted out that Chapter 1 will be returning to Fortnite permanently starting December 6th. Now, I know that I've already made a video talking about the pros and cons of whether or not this is a good or a bad idea, but there's a couple of concepts from that video that I want to kind of expound upon. Not to mention, there's something else that I realized that might actually be a benefit to this mode becoming permanent. Now, before I jump into that, I want to make it very clear to my audience that I am actually excited to return to the original version of Fortnite. As cool as Season OG was, it simply did not give us enough time to truly immerse ourselves in what the Chapter 1 experience was like. The idea of being able to re-experience Chapter 1 season by season over a 10-month period is insanely exciting to me. However, I think what makes this weird and what gives a lot of players such as myself reservations about this is how close it's being released to Fortnite Chapter 6. Will this split the player base too much? How long can they hold a consistent player base? And most importantly, is this just one big excuse to make Chapter 6 lackluster? Honestly, I think that there's two possibilities for the outcome of how this will affect Fortnite moving forward. The first of which is a bit more pessimistic and falls in line with how I felt in my original video covering this topic. To put it bluntly, if Epic Games is not careful, this could kill Fortnite. But what do I mean by that? When I say kill Fortnite, I don't mean that no one's ever going to play the game again and that the game's going to be completely dead. However, I think that Fortnite OG could definitely hurt the player base. One thing I think people need to keep in mind is that one of the big novelties of Fortnite is that the game reinvents itself every 3 months. We get a major loot pool change or a meta change. Fortnite is a game that needs to constantly be moving forward. That doesn't mean that we can't revisit the past every once in a while or bring back old items from previous seasons to reinvigorate the loot pool. But the core of the game, the main season theme, the metas, they do need to shift and evolve constantly. One attitude I've seen from the community is OG is great for older players that don't want to deal with the modern version of Fortnite. Epic can do whatever they want with the main mode, and if you don't like it, go play OG. This is the worst possible attitude to adapt. Once again, I understand that the game needs to move forward and that Fortnite is trying to provide an experience that suits everybody. However, I don't think the way to do that is to go the path of Fortnite Chapter 5. What I'm getting at is that if Fortnite Chapter 6 is just like a rehashed Chapter 5 with like the same bullet drop meta, the same lackluster weapon attachments, more medallions, things like that that do not reflect the classic era of Fortnite, some of the classic game features that made the game more fun, then we are going to have a serious problem. I want the current version of Fortnite, whatever the main BR mode is, the modern version of BR, I want that to be the best version of Fortnite possible. This is why the mentality of if you don't like it, go play OG is such a bad mentality to have. Epic wants as many people on the current version of Fortnite as possible. This is where all the big collabs, the major live events, and the story progression happens for the game. Not to mention all their new experimental features that they're testing out with Unreal Engine 5. I've stated this before, but Fortnite as a game is one big marketing campaign for Unreal Engine 5. It shows other companies what is possible with their gaming engine. Not to mention all the collabs that they bring into Fortnite from main BR. They want people to actively engage with those collabs because it makes them look good to their partners. Ultimately, what I'm getting at here is that we don't want to segregate the communities between OG players and then the new, more modern base players over here that like the newer interpretation of Fortnite. We still want the community to be unified towards the future of Fortnite, and at its core, that has to be improving the main new version of Battle Royale. This is also why bringing in the OG mode is completely different than bringing in other metaverse modes. I've seen some people try to compare bringing in Fortnite OG as a permanent Battle Royale mode to the Find It in Fortnite model with Lego and Rocket Racing and all that. The difference is that each one of those game modes have their own dedicated player bases because they are completely different types of games. The same people that are going to be hardcore Lego players or hardcore Rocket Racing players are probably not the same type of people that are going to be playing Battle Royale. But when you've got two main competing Battle Royales on top of Reload, that is definitely splitting the player base up quite a lot. Now, I do think that OG can have its own dedicated player base, and I want to talk more about that in a moment, but I want to emphasize this point here. I think that for the betterment of Fortnite as a whole, the modern version, the current Battle Royale island, always needs to be the main priority of the game. Epic needs to figure out the balance between old and new Fortnite, because if they don't, both player bases will eventually get bored with the game. This is why I say that Fortnite Chapter 6 has to be the best version of Fortnite that it can possibly be, but also why I am optimistic about OG's return being a positive for the game. One thing I didn't explain to you guys last time is that Epic doesn't want OG players just to play the OG mode. I think its purpose is to bring old players back to the game, but what happens when the old players get bored with the older version of Fortnite? Well, I'm inclined to believe that they'll probably want to try the new version of BR. If Epic is set on capturing those players, they need to learn from their failings of Fortnite Chapter 5. Instead of throwing their hands up in the air and saying, you know what, we're just going to make the most crazy crap that we can in Fortnite Chapter 6 for our main BR mode, what they should be doing is taking the best elements from the previous seasons of Fortnite. That way, when old players come over to try Chapter 6, they are not having the same jarring experience that everybody else did when we went from a season OG to Chapter 5. See, the big difference between now and Chapter 5 was that Epic had no idea that OG was going to be the success that it was. I'm sure they knew it was going to bring back a lot of players, but not to the degree that they had it. But you know what's even crazier? At Chapter 5's launch, it actually had more players than OG. So what does that tell you? That means a lot of those OG players at least came back for the first few days of Chapter 5 to try it out and see what the game was like. The issue was it was too different of an experience from what we had been used to for the previous month. We went from having a vibrant map, weapons exclusive to specific rarities, as well as goofy items in the loot pool, to a more grounded, based, bare bones, dry loot pool and a more drab, realistic map. Albeit there were some cool new features, it just felt like a lot of the soul of Fortnite's identity had been ripped out of the game, especially when you're coming straight from the era that made Fortnite as popular as it is today in the first place. Chapter 1 is the skeleton, the blueprint of what Fortnite would eventually become, and Chapter 5 was trying to go as far away from that as possible. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that we cannot rely on nostalgia. It becomes a law of diminishing returns, which is why I had my initial reservations for Chapter 1 being permanent in the first place. The more you expose the player base to OG-based modes, the less of a novelty it becomes, the less special it will naturally be over time. It will just become status quo. Fortnite will no longer be able to hit the OG button when it comes to reinvigorating the player base. And I think a detail that a lot of people ignore is that OG will not stay popular with the OG players forever. Yes, it will have a core player base, and yes, I'm sure the numbers will stay high, but for how long? How long will OG players that play the original version of Fortnite want to continue to play an older version of the game? Even those players are going to want to try something new after a while, and if Chapter 6 is not good enough to hold those players, OG's player base will eventually fall, as well as Chapter 6's. My point and my hope here is that Chapter 1 is the big shiny prize that's attracting all the OGs to come back to Fortnite, but Chapter 6 and the concurrent seasons afterwards are what keep the player base there. I want OG to do well, but we also need modern Fortnite to do well too, because you cannot bank on nostalgia forever. This is ultimately why I'm saying OG might be a good thing for Chapter 6. Fortnite is smart. They will make Chapter 6 feel like a fresh take on the game while also keeping some of the core classic gameplay features. They need to give us a vibrant map, a diverse loot pool with weapons exclusive to specific rarities, trap slots with new trap types, and hit scan weapons. This is something that I stated in my last video, but what I need people to understand is we don't always need Fortnite to come up with brand new ideas. We just need them to expound upon pre-established concepts. I don't need you to bring medallions into the game, but make new, more interesting hit scan based weapons that have special abilities. That's what the exotics were in Chapter 4. Why are we not coming up with new types of trap items or even reworking old ones? Make sure this next map is beautiful, vibrant, colorful. It just pops and it has more of the playful Fortnite aesthetic. And finally, make sure that weapons feel special to pick up. For the 18 trillionth time this week, having every weapon at every rarity is a mistake. It cheapens your loot pool and it makes your game feel more drab. Not to mention, Chapter 5 had the added bonus of making every weapon look the same. The weapons should look and feel different between rarities. They should be special. The goal here is not to rely on the past, but to pull from it to make the game better. There are just core, intrinsic aspects of the game and of the brand that make it more fun. And I want to make this clear to everybody that's listening. I'm not asking for Chapter 6 to be OG. I want it to be its own thing. I want it to be a new, fresh take on Fortnite, but it should incorporate some of those classic elements. It's not just because we're blinded by nostalgia and think the old ways are better. No, it's because that some of those old gameplay loops and mechanics were just intrinsically more fun. Ultimately, we don't want players to have the same experience they had last year going from Season OG to Chapter 5. We want to keep newer players interested by all the cool new things that Fortnite does, but also pay respect to the older Fortnite players that like certain play patterns and gameplay loops. Play patterns that a lot of the newer players have never experienced, and quite frankly, they don't know how special it is. Once again, one of the novelties of Fortnite is that the game is reinventing itself every few months, but it's also at its most fun when it pays respect to its past. I think the best example of this is Chapter 4. Say what you want about this era of Fortnite, but I honestly think that Chapter 4 had some of the best gameplay that we've ever seen, in spite of them having every weapon at every rarity. Specifically in Chapter 4 Seasons 1 and 4, I think that was the most Fortnite the game had felt in a long time. They were constantly adding new innovative items while also keeping in some of the old intrinsic elements of the game intact. For its time, Chapter 4 was the perfect fusion of old and new Fortnite together. You still had collabs, but you still had a lot of original ideas and concepts like that heist update, which kept players really engaged. And listen, for my OGs that are planning on returning, I want you to leave a comment down below and let me know how you feel about this. Yes, I'm sure that all of us are excited to try out OG Fortnite again, but I guarantee you, you guys, after a few months, will be looking for something new as well. That fact honestly has me a little curious as to what Fortnite's gonna do after 10 seasons of OG. Like, are they just gonna cycle through all 10 seasons of Chapter 1 again, or are they gonna try something new? That actually gives me an idea for another video that I wanna make. And if you wanna see that, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because eventually I wanna have a conversation on what Fortnite Chapter 1's full potential could possibly be. But until then, I love y'all. Check out the video on screen, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.